We're going to talk about tools. Your first tool, not the kit, little plastic ones you got for Christmas from Santa when you were a kid. The first one you bought. Think about it. We're going to talk about it coming up. I'm Roger, welcome to the shop, and we're going to talk about tools here, and we're going to talk about the first tool that you bought, something you really wanted, and of course, depending on your age, you may or may not be able to remember. I'm in my mid-60s, and I distinctly remember the first tool I ever bought, and it wasn't a hand tool, it was actually an electric drill. I had been given, some little toy handy-andy tool set when I was a kid. But a friend and I were working on, we were going to build our own go-kart. And no, it never really worked out. But we had an old bed frame that we wanted to convert into a go-kart frame. And no, that didn't work either. I think I was probably about 12, 13 years old. We all had bicycles, and occasionally when my dad wasn't looking, I'd sneak into his toolbox to use a hand tool, maybe a wrench or a crescent wrench or something to work on my bike. And we used his oil can. Of course, we never put stuff away like we were supposed to, and we would get yelled at, just like all young kids do. But we wanted to make this go-kart frame, so I had saved up my money from mowing lawns, and I distinctly remember the cost of the drill was $7. This was a lot of money in the 1960s. And it wasn't a real high-end drill, it was just quarter-inch, aluminum frame, non-reversible, non-variable speed, just a quarter-inch drill. But I had saved up, and I went and I bought that drill. And I was able to get some drill bits from my friend's dad, and we managed to drill holes in this frame and bolt it together, and had the start of a go-kart that, like I said, never came to fruition or anything. Of course, this was, like I said, very young. Well, then I wanted to have my own set of hand tools. And there was a department store, which is also where I bought the drill, which was across the street from where I grew up. And it was called Zayre's. And they are no longer in business. If you're old like me, you'll remember the Zayre's department stores. It was a precursor to Kmart, which doesn't exist now anymore either. Or Montgomery Ward's, which no longer exists. Or Sears, which no longer exists. But Sears used to kind of be the go-to place when you had a little bit more money and you could go buy tools. So I decided to save up, and I don't know, it was $5 or $6. I got this set. It was made by Oxwall, and I still do have a couple of the screwdrivers that came with it. It came with some basic combination open-end wrenches and a little 3/8 drive socket set, and a few screwdrivers, and a little square, which was not really square, but it was a kind of a little handy thing to have around. But that's kind of what got me started, because once I became a teenager, of course, all teenage boys want a car, and this was back when the early 70s, and I wanted to be able to work on it, and I needed tools. I did have a job. I worked in the automotive department at Montgomery Ward, which, as I mentioned before, no longer exists. Maybe you remember it, maybe you don't. Well, my job was changing tires, and I did not need any tools for that. If I would get tools, I could get promoted and get an extra like nickel an hour. It was a $1.65 an hour job, and that was what the minimum wage was back then. I could move up and start doing shocks and exhausts and that type of thing. Couldn't graduate up to the brakes yet or anything like that, but I needed tools. Well, the way they had it set up at Montgomery Ward, and they had a pretty substantial tool department, and their tools, their brand name was Powercraft, and I do still have quite a few of them. You could buy their tools if you were going to be using them on the job where you work at Montgomery Ward's for 40% off. And to make it even better, they gave you a Montgomery Ward credit card. So here I am, a 16-year-old with a credit card. This is bad news, because you don't really know, or you don't realize at the time, you got to pay that money back, and you got to make enough money to do it. So I had, it was like a $300 limit on it. So I bought a rolling tool chest, the base, the top, wrenches, sockets, ratchets. I mean, I maxed that card out. And then I had to pay it back. And it took a while, and of course there was interest on it, and it took even longer. And I still didn't really learn my lesson, because then I got a Sears credit card. And Sears was really known for their Craftsman tools. And back then they were all very high quality. Lifetime guarantee, lifetime replacement. If you had any problem with it, you just brought it in. Here it is, it's broke, it doesn't work, the finish came off, whatever, they give you another one, and out the door you go. And I maxed that credit card out. I learned a very, very valuable lesson there, because I ended up working 3 jobs for a while. But this kind of started me on the tool fetish, and as you can see around me here, there's a lot of tools. And there's a lot of them you can't even see that I've collected over the years. And if you watched any of my previous videos, you know I worked as an electrician for 42 years. So therefore I have a whole bunch of electrical tools. And my wife kind of says, well, why don't you just sell them? You don't do that. You never know when you're going to need it. I have duplicates of a lot of things. You can see back in that corner back there is full of clamps. And do I have enough clamps? Nobody ever has enough clamps. You get into a project and then you're trying to figure out how to make something, or you're running off to the store to buy some more clamps. So this is how that tool fetish gets started. Just don't make the mistake I did by getting that plastic money when you're young and not realizing you're going to have to pay it back. I just wanted to kind of make this little short video on to maybe take you on a trip down memory lane, or your own memory lane. And depending on how old you are, you may or may not remember when you got it, what you got, why you got it, but it'll make you think. Hope you got a little bit of something out of this. Maybe it made you chuckle a little bit as you thought about what you've done in the past. Appreciate getting a thumbs up. Always helps the channel. We're always looking for subscribers. I'm Roger in the shop. See you in the next one. Thanks for watching.